So sit up straight and tall. And of course, there's the physical side. Since I've torn my rotator cuffs, my practice isn't as physical. So my reasons for practicing have transformed and changed, right? But I'm going to try to string together some beads or a quilt. I like to think of it as a quilt. You know, you got different sections of the quilt, different swatches, and then you sew it all together, right? So one of the lines that I say a lot to you is that prana, whatever's here, remember prana is going to be both what's here and what's not here. So it's going to be both the control you have over your body, and it's also going to be the empty space in the room with you. And somehow all that's part of what we need to appreciate, right? Turns out that the empty space in the room both creates compassion, and for a lot of people that don't have grounded minds, creates violence. If it's not realized, it creates fear. So you got this already in the hula hoop, you've got an incredible amount going on, right? But prana rewards structure. So when I ask you to balance in the whole room, I want you to feel, and boundary is essential in order for you to be, your minds to be able to perceive what's on the inside of you as sensation. So feel your feet and your sitting bones, balance your head over your neck, be open to the space between the ears and your neck with what's behind you, what's above you, what's below you. And don't try to let those in. Remember last week or last time I was teaching about how the brain needs to receive, it needs to be passive. In order for you to expand within your hula hoop, you actually need to receive more without judgment. Right? So instead of thinking about the instructions right now, which is going to be the direction asana is going to make you travel, right? You're just trying to allow. So what's inside your hula hoop is vortex, which I, in the past, have told you is, I think I see it as similar to Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, right? Except it's an orb, right? There's a traveling orb that's around you, right? And they actually now in neuroscience are beginning to realize and test people's orbs where your brain is intuitively connected to the space directly around your body. So someone with trauma doesn't receive well subtle movements within the space of where their invisible orb is. This is actually being studied, right, in traumatic studies. So you sit and you allow, you start to amplify the structure. And this is how asana is a way of giving boundary. Again, feel your sitting bones and your feet, but now fill in the gap from the inner knee, inner groin to the inner knee down to the inner heel. And then gently, gently start to lift your chest. And I hope you've been, last time I talked a lot about the space between your shoulder blades. What if I can make that more open? Not just from up here, but by learning to spread, drop, and slightly bring forward into my body while staying in my sitting bones and my feet, and connecting my groin to my inner heel, balancing my head over my neck, putting my lips together, teeth slightly apart. So I let the emptiness come through me as much as my control. And once I do that, it's a good time to notice your breath. So when I say things like breathe for the empty spaces in your body, that's a big line I say to you. You can't know your empty spaces without having a boundary, without having some structure. Otherwise, your mind just dissipates and dissolves into the ether. You're looking to have awareness of the happening that isn't dependent on judgment. That's why you practice. I hope you're not making this strictly a mental exercise. I hope you're using your sitting bones and your feet as much as awareness in your head. From this more awakeness within the fullness and the emptiness, bring your hands into prayer if you can. If not, keep them on your lap. Stay balanced, because once you go off balance, you lose. So my hands are on my lap, and if I'm going to put my hands together in prayer, I'm going to put my elbow on the table, because I know that if I'm off balance, I become less full. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Feel the skin around your temples, your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Feel your feet. Gently allow the soles of your feet to open. If you have to move them, do it. To do that, there's an unchanging part of your experience. In centering, you're trying to happen around that unchanging, so it goes through you. It doesn't just scare you. Good. And then release. Take your sternum up and your chin down, but do it with grace, right? And that doesn't mean without effort. It's hard to lift your sternum well. And notice how this position changes the way you receive your breath. So much is happening within your hula hoop. Notice the breath into each nostril, into each lung. Stay aware of each sitting bone, the inner heel of both feet. Feel this, make a connection as you lift your chest and go down from inner groin to the inner heel. But stay connected to the whole room, inside and out, simultaneously, guided by an unchanging energy. That, by the way, my body is vibrating some, but that doesn't change the fact that I have faith that the unchanging is here amidst the change. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So like I'm shaking a little bit. I'm on an antibiotic that's making my body's not exactly liking. And so I can feel the shake in me. And there are days you're going to have stuff like that, not just because antibiotics, right? So I can tell I'm shaking a little bit, way deep, right? And if I weren't doing yoga, I wouldn't notice it. The fact that I can't stop that really quiet reverberation doesn't change the fact that something's unchanging, right? So instead of fighting to get to what's unchanging, you allow that it's here, even if you're vibrating. Sit up straight and tall again. So yeah, you got a pain here, a pain there, a misalignment here, a misalignment there. All of that is true. And it's still true. Good, and then release. So when I'm trying to do an asana, sometimes I practice this way, okay? Remember, if you practice the same way, I've been doing it since 1991, so for 31 years. If you practice the same way every day, you won't sustain your practice. One of the real things that come as you become more of a veteran in yoga is you practice differently. You know, there are different ways to practice from different perspectives, all this stuff. And one's not better than the other, right? But so one of the ways that I practice sometimes is I try to make my whole body, my whole being, go in service of a singular action. Okay, so, and I think I've told you this story before, and I realized some of this stuff, this practice I'm about to share with you. I've done it with you before, and it's goofy. But this is for about the first year I was practicing yoga. Every morning I would do this in my house. Okay, I would practice clapping with my whole body. Okay, and the reason why I picked clapping is the sound of it. The hands hit near the midline, right? And what I wanted was my midline to participate. So one of the ways to think about yoga is you're trying to create a singularity within the variation and diversity of your experience. So asana, how a more advanced practitioner balances in a very complicated pose, is that part of them is being able to stay in the midst of the movement and the misalignment. They're being able to stay connected to the singularity of the unchanging, right? And so I would start practicing. So sit up in your chair, right? I would think about this action like all of me was closing this space, right? So before you start clapping, like there's space between your hands, it comes together, it hits, and then watch the space go out again. Like be in the cosmic soup that you're in. So before you're making sound and having a collision, I want all of you to come with your hands and then all of you to go apart. Remember last week, I think I was talking about breathing in a way that the tablecloth comes towards you. Right? Is that right? Did I teach that? I think I did. Right? So I'm trying to have everything come with me. Everything go apart. So it's not just my hands. I'm trying to find a unified singularity in the midst of movement. And all of a sudden it gets goofy if my mind thinks like, what am I doing right now? This is so stupid. So when I was first starting yoga and I was younger, it was, instead of going slow like that, I think, shit, I want a big sound, right? Right. So I would practice, and if I hit it just right, I might have to mute myself because I can clap really loud because I practiced this so much in my life. And it's not because I'm using more force, right? But so I like the pop of the sound. So I want my whole spine in my midline. There, I missed. Anybody hear the change of that sound? I promise you I wasn't hitting my hands harder together, right? I was coming into a singularity with my whole body, right? So as you keep doing that, make sure your inner thighs are connected to your hands. So have your whole, you can hear me miss, right? I miss the alignment sometimes. But I want your whole midline to become part of the clapping. and then stop clapping. So I don't know about you, but when I clap with my whole body, do anyone feel the buzz of having moved your whole body at once? Pay attention to your nervous system right now. Does anyone feel what I'm talking about after you clap like that or not? Thumbs up if you can feel it, right? Okay, again, your mind should be blown. Like more of your nervous system started to enter what was a singular movement. This is what asana is when you do it well, right? So what I think I've told this story before. My neighbors in California, there is no insulation, so noise is just, you're in each other's living rooms. They used to think I was so weird that my neighbors would come up and talk to me and say, "What's going on in the morning, right? Why are you clapping rhythmically alone?" And how do you answer that? I don't know. I'm just freaking weird. I'm doing yoga. Well, that doesn't even make sense, right? Again, like it matters, like you're not being goofy. You're trying to touch the amazingness in your hula hoop. So as you do that, the tendency is for the mind to follow the hit of your hands. With the quiet part of you, stay in your heels and stay in your inner thighs, even as the hands are moving and creating a collision. So and you have to, so in order to, while I'm clapping, to actually feel more of this, I need to practice what's one of the limbs of yoga, which is called pratyahara. I need to go back, even though there's an outer action. I need to withdraw so I stay connected, so my whole body inside the hula hoop can go into the action. Try it again. I'm going to really try to get it this time. When I get it, it makes me smile. Does it make you smile? When I can feel all of me go. So I had this vinyasa teacher, was trying to teach my 9-year-old son, who's now 22, a very famous vinyasa teacher, and he was trying to show him vinyasans like movement. And his image to my son was, have you ever seen those, a cheetah running in slow motion? You know, like, he wouldn't realize is we watch Muji of Omaha's Wild Kingdom growing up, but Paul never had, right? So we had actually seen things like this. But if you think about a cheetah, if you ever can Google it, when they're not about to hit the ground, when they're flying through the air, everything is relaxed. And then as soon as they make contact with the earth, everything flexes. And then when they launch off the earth, everything's relaxed again. Right? So there's this unbelievable ceasing while the cheetah's traveling 60 miles an hour. And then when it's necessary, everything flexes and goes. So this last time, when your hands comes together, you're like that cheetah making contact with the world and then not. Right? Going back to the instantaneous ceasing, right? So I know to get aligned. I can't do it well if I'm off balance. Ooh, God, I can get it right off the bat on that one. So when I realized as a paraplegic that I could clap with my whole body, that is a tremendous amount of freedom that I didn't know I had, that has changed my life. So I'm thinking about Gay. If Gay, I saw her earlier, is she on the call? Who can't, or some of you can't move and can't clap, right? So here's context. It looked like she left. But here's oh, maybe she's on another page here. Here's context for that. Like, so say you can't do the movement. Has anyone ever heard the trite line, well, you got to see with your third eye? You know, like, as far as the idea, there's an eye up here and blah, 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 blah. And remember, that's just yogis trying to describe weird crap, right? And meditators trying to explain that there's more within your hula hoop than you know, and that there's a level of intuiting and connection that comes from not your physical abilities, your overtly physical abilities. It's built into your nervous system. So the fact that they locate it between the eyes, the third eye right here, think about why. When you become, like, take your arm if you can and touch right on your forehead, and it quiet downs your frontal cortex, right? Reference on the front of the head does, right? And you think like, wait, if I allow myself to receive that, something does change. Keep that as you open your eyes. So you feel the reference there, right? As you have your eyes open. So that's me trying to tell you there's ways to try to explore the third eye without it being barfy and weird. It's like they're not saying it because they're barfy and weird and new agey. They're saying it because something's happening here. You and I don't have to explain the same conceptual framework to explain it, but something happens when you don't just come pouring out your eyes, right? When something stays back towards the spine, even as your eyes are open. And then if you can have that energy as you're quieting down your head, and then slightly lift your sternum to let it be where it's supposed to be, in the center of the chest, something changes, right? I'm bringing all this up. So now I want you to do, if Gay were on the call, I don't think she can clap. I don't know if anyone else is here that can't clap. So I want you to do that clapping without clapping. So another way to say this kind of koan is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And you go like, those damn clever yogis. Well, what if they weren't just being clever? They were actually trying to describe something. Put up one hand. Or not, because Gay might have to have it be with no hand, right? Don't just remember the clapping, but that's going to help you, the sound. What would be the sound of one hand clapping? Might I have to see that from a different place of seeing? So I have certain students that I have to have do the yoga from this place, right? So now, and the thing that got me thinking about it was about 20 years ago, I heard my yoga teacher say to me, Matt, can you hear the silent ohms? Do you ever practice silent ohms? Instead of om, you hear it without sound in the very background of your awareness. That made me start to realize that I could clap with one hand, or there is a sound here. If I let it be part of my being that comes from the unchanging. So as you sit up straight and tall, feel all the change. Again, I can feel that I'm shaking a little bit, but I also can then allow that there's something unchanging here. And then as I think or feel, whether there's one hand in front of you or not, I'm going to keep clapping like the silent om. Good. And then release. So if you just think that you are imagining the sound of one hand clapping, I'm really mad at you. Right? Because that's not the point, right? But that's a faulty category that we've accepted in the Western tradition. So as you sit up straight and tall, we're going to start like this level of awareness is part of every pose. In a way, I'm teaching Shavasana again in every pose in the way we're going to start moving. So I'm sitting up straight and tall. I'm grabbing my knees. I'm trying to increase my grounding. Right? I'm trying to do everything I can. I'm coming forward on my sitting bones, so I'm more alert. I'm being aware of the spaces on each side of my neck. And when I let the sound of the clap happen, it makes me want to smile because there's more in my hula hoop than I knew. It was already true. Good, and then release. So this is the level of awareness that you're trying to bring into every asana. So when you start this, so we're gonna go do the more physical stuff for the remainder of the class. So when I tell you to come forward and come back, right? And I want you to bring the whole world with you, right? Include the place where there's the sound of one hand clapping or the clapping without the clapping, right? And so you're just gonna go and start to feel your body while the back of your eyes, while the third eye, all those just descriptive terms, right, are just trying to help you to include more of what's inside your hula hoop, right? And I'm going back and forward because I want to bring all of this into action. All right, so bring your hands into prayer. So those of you that can do this, great. Otherwise, put your hands on your knees, right? But I want you to now, as you, if you can bring your hands together like this or do it on your knees, right? I want you to make, without clapping, as you open the center of your palm, I want you to keep connected to the bottoms of your feet, to where your knees are, to where each side of your shoulder is. So each side of your head and your neck is. So you're actually, as you bring together and increase the pressure between your hands or against your knees, you're trying to bring more of you, a singularity, like my whole being is actually in the movement of opening my palm or of grounding my knees. I want all of me here. Because remember, one of the limbs is focus and concentration. It's asana is only one of the limbs, right? So now take your legs wide. So when you start to add movement, remember, we have to learn more from less, right? When you start to add movement, it doesn't teach you the unchanging any better. It just makes you have to find it in a more diversity of experience. So meditation's its own limb, right? It's one of the limbs of yoga. Lean over, push down. Done. We did this last week. So now you're trying to go, where's the unchanging part? Does the unchanging make me want to lift my chest? Hit down, rise up. It does. It travels through asana, right? And how can something unchanging travel? I don't freaking know. I don't know if there's a sound of one hand clapping either. And I don't know, except I do know. What the hell? It's amazing. And then back. I'm gonna go the first way and do it with more fluid movement. And then down. And then up. I'm being more aware of my legs from the sound of one hand clapping. than I am the movement of my arms. And as I stretch out my arm, I want it to make me expand, help me expand my legs. Because guess what? Asana was to achieve singularity while moving in different directions, right? That it's revealing that the core experience is still here, right? Even though I'm introducing movement. Now, I hope as we're going back and forth and doing this a few times, that whatever you gain as a yogi, you're bringing into every movement without all my instructions, right? That you're being your own yogi, bringing more of you to bear, more of your hula hoop. And when I start hanging out on this level, I get happier, right? And then come on back. So some of you, I know it's hard to move your arms like that, right? So one of the things to observe, especially if you're in England, right, is to see if you cannot be impatient with the fact that your body doesn't move as well and it fatigues faster. So forward again, back again, right? Just so you know, at the core of it, the yogic realization has nothing to do with the complexity of asana, right? That's not what it is, right? Asana is just trying to show you that it's true in every context, right? Inhale, take an arm up. So now, exhale, the cheetah hits ground. Inhale, the cheetah's in the air. Grabs the side of the chair, hits ground again. Inhale, the cheetah's flying through the air again while staying grounded, right? Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. So there are places where the effort hits the world, but your experience isn't exhausted or completely depleted, come back to center from the places that collide with the world, right? So inhale, take your arm up. So remember, I'm trying to think that if I could just be more aware and appreciate what I have in my life within my hula hoop, I might be a better person. And so I'm knowing the places where the cheetah's hitting the earth from which I have to move and expand, but also be graceful. You get to watch a slow motion cheetah running, it's gorgeous. And then come on back to center and be in the center. Now I want to go right through the midline. I like touching up on the midline. So Bhikkhu Angar, nobody does this, or very few people do it, but between every pose and even between each side, he recommends coming back into Tadasana or back to the midline. And we're just practicing the midline in a forward and a back bend. So we're just making it slightly more dynamic. But the midline is crucial in every pose because that's more unchanging, because that's where the sound of one hand claps, right? Okay, so take your legs wide again, or as wide as they're gonna go, or not, but extend from your hip out through your knees. So those of you that then can take your leg knees wide, it's easier for you to spread from the center of your sacrum out towards one knee and then out towards the other. If you don't have your knees wide, you have to go to the place that this class has been about, right? But I want you to connect your sitting bones and then an expansion across the low back out to each knee. It's easier for the brain to believe when my legs are wide. right? And I'm going to go over again. I really want to focus on the down foot touching the floor, because I want this to rise through my spine. Now you could take your arm behind you and just practice right here, opening that shoulder. But in order to open this shoulder, right, which I just rolled forward, this isn't an action by itself. The inner edge of the opposite shoulder blade has to move into my body. So it's actually that, not just that. It's that. I'm trying to show you that it's the singularity that moves you, right? And in fact, it's not just about my shoulders. There's me collapsing again. It's actually, to do this well, I have to have my sit bones and my feet and be spreading out through each femur bone. Here it all comes in. The singularity of the action, including my whole body. And then I'm going to collapse again. There's lack of connection in my spine. This is why so many hips and knee and shoulder replacements are happening, right? Because there's emptiness in our joints instead of fullness, right? So I'm going to open. That's just gravy. So if you want to keep it down here, fine. The arm is gravy, right? And then back. So I'm going to go to the other side. And again, I'm trying to apply this idea. I'm going to take my arm behind my back. I could just do it for this side. It's harder for me. Like, I could just take my shoulder back. That's me being a disconnected human being, hardly using anything inside my hula hoop. Maybe one weed inside my hula hoop, right? Now, I'm going to now do this back and the bottom edge of the opposite shoulder blade to come into action. And then let it collapse again. And then watch as I include more of myself, not just from a judging mind, but from the place where there's a sound of one hand clapping. And I'm going to collapse again, because my mind has to lose shit in order to realize shit, right? Such a bummer. We're about to lose a whole bunch of our civilization here, right? And then open it up again. Now find my sitting bones, extend through each leg. Just showed me where my head needs to be. Good, and then come on back to center. So that one's harder on my shoulder here, so I gotta let it flop out. Those are the things that I want you to be able to do on your own, is know where you need to release if things overworked, because I can't see you well enough, right? So I'm going to go back to the midline. So I want you to lift up out of your chair if you can, or even just rise a little bit. But as you do, I want you to engage from that other place. And then from that other place, don't collapse as much. And then I collapse. I can't avoid this part of my life, right? But I can expand my domain of experience. And then forward again. And then back up with one arm. All right. How do I make more of me in this action? Where should I go? How should I engage my chest? How should I engage the palm, my fingertips, my heels, my sitting bones? Write your own yoga pose. Good, and then come on down. Ask yourself questions. Figure out. Let the happening, if you stay congruent from that deeper place, you don't have to learn the instructions in words. Nobody teaches the cheetah how to run, right? and how to be graceful. It just happens. Okay, and I'm moving again because I know there's a whole bunch happening here. I'm going to quick twist and go, I want to be happy here. And then I'm going to go back. And I'm going to start making the movements happen faster while trying to not lose the unchanging part. Right? So I'm going to find a rhythm. So I just found my rhythm. Find your own. I'm grabbing my shin, right? In order to get this rhythm of going back and forth, right? Oh, dang, I like that one, right? I'm trying to just have my spine come awake, right? Because it feels good, right? Back and forth again. Mm-hmm. So I had to then come into center and practice symmetry. So at the end here, as we head towards Shavasana, but I want to talk about breath before we do Shavasana. So this idea that my whole body breathes, not just my lungs, it's not an idea, it's a fact, right? Well, it's a weird fact. Maybe it's not a fact in the Western sense. So I'm balancing here, going inward so I feel my outline better. So there are lots of styles of yoga that I don't think are as effective for you and me that try to lead with the breath. They move, but the breath is showing them the way. Sometimes when I want to make my point, they use the breath as a machete to cut through the jungle, right? And that's one way to do it. You know, it's maybe even how you've been trained, right? But I remember in a pranayama class, which has everything to do with what I've been teaching this whole class. The teacher said, be there a split second before your breath gets there. He was talking about an inhalation and the expansion of inhalation. So sit here for a second. The only way to be there a split second before your breath gets there is from the place of the third eye. It's from the unchanging place. So unless I try to find that deeper layer, my breath will remain in my lungs, which, by the way, is a pretty good place for it to be. But I want you to, like, similar to clapping as loud as you can, I want you to be in the bottoms of your feet, your sitting bones, each side of your chest. Balance your head over your neck, right? And as you begin the inhalation, do it with your whole body. As you release the exhalation, do it with your whole body. One of the ways that I practice this, doing it with your whole body, comes from a place of retention slightly. So, you know, when the ocean comes up the beach and it comes up the shore, up the sand, and then right before it starts to wash out, there's a slight pause before the water goes back and returns, right? So let there be awareness of the pause before it happens. Let the sound of one hand clapping be the foundation of your breath. Be in your whole body as you observe the inhalation and exhalation. Good, and then release. Now, what we just did is one of the ways that Shavasana is in every pose. But what we just did is very different from Shavasana, because Shavasana, you're not trying to be so aware, you're trying to be supported. So get better position in your chair. Right? There isn't so much focus in Shavasana, but there is alertness until there isn't, and maybe you fall asleep. So I'm wanting to make sure. So there I can just feel the vibration in me. I'm traveling through that layer to the chair, to the earth, to the space around me. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Feel your breath. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. Thank your body. Thank it again. When you're ready, open your eyes. It's too bright, close them again. Open them again. So one of the things about the beauty of a yoga that's not as accessible as this vinyasa yoga, which does very physical poses while emphasizing breathing, is that kind of almost by force, the whole body breathes because the whole body's moving and the breath is touching the whole body as it moves, right? But because we don't get the same consistent movement, that's not an easy way for us to learn how the whole body breathes. Right. So what you got in today's class was me trying to say the whole body breathes from the place that is near to the midline and has the sound of one hand clapping. And there are different ways to describe that. But when you go there, then there's a singularity in any movement, including your breath. So I've been thinking about this for a long time because I got in a couple places in Light on Pranayama says every cell of the body breathes, which in some way is true because every cell gets oxygenated, right? One of the times I read, which is again another description. Imagine every cell of your body has two eyes, the eyes that focus outward to the world, but there's also eyes that focus inward. Like, so every cell is gazing, using the metaphor, in both directions. And when I do that, I feel my whole body breathing better. So you're sitting here just for a second. Good. When you're ready, hands together. Namaste. If you can put your hands together, otherwise just namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.